So for the last 3 months, I've gamed only on the Steam Deck. No consoles, no high-end gaming PC, just the Steam Deck. So today, I'll share about number 1, why I decided to buy the Steam Deck coming from a console gamer, as well as number 2, why I love the Steam Deck so much. Let's check it out. So when Valve announced the Steam Deck back in mid-2021, I honestly was really excited. I thought that, it was something that was really great on paper, where you get to play Steam games on a handheld that you can hold in the palm of your hand, because I personally love handhelds. I've had every Sony handheld as well as a lot of the Nintendo handhelds. I was like, I love gaming, I love handhelds, so why not explore more handhelds and have different types of experiences? And I know you will be saying that the Steam Deck is different from the other handhelds that I mentioned. The Steam Deck is a PC handheld, not a console handheld. And while that is true, I was at a point where I really wanted to explore PC gaming and try to plug into the PC community. I was somebody who was a console gamer for a long time, and I kind of wanted to make that transition. And in 2021, I felt it was about time. 2021 was a year that was really interesting in the gaming community. 2021, it marks the time when Sony started to port their PS exclusives to the PC and make that as a priority. Now, Helldivers obviously came out on the PC, I believe, in 2015, but that was not something that Sony did all the time. It wasn't a common practice for Sony. It wasn't until Horizon Zero Dawn got ported to the PC in 2020 when Sony really actively decided to port their games to the PC in a regular basis. Back in September 2020, we saw the release of Horizon Zero Dawn on the PC. We saw Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart in June 2021, and we saw Days Gone back in May 2021. These are just a few examples of some exclusives that were originally only available on the Sony platform, in which you had to have a PlayStation to play those games. But with those games being ported to PC, specifically also at Steam, it really made me kind of decide that it was time to, jump into the ship of the PC community, because Microsoft have been giving their games to PC for many years. They already made their games available on the PC for many years, but Sony didn't do so until, 2020. So that was something in which it was to a point where I really couldn't justify myself to stay with, consoles. I just feel like I could save so much money if I just went with PC and not have to have both consoles, both a PlayStation as well as an Xbox, in order to play my games, in order to play all the games that I want. I want to have one platform in which I can play every single game, and that would be nice. Obviously, the Nintendo Switch is an exception because I still believe that's the best way to play the Nintendo exclusives. But anyways, with Valve claiming that the Steam Deck will be able to run a lot of the AAA titles and how capable the Steam Deck was, I decided to give it a shot. Sure, I kind of went in with the mindset that handhelds will be less powerful compared to gaming laptops as well as gaming desktops, but at the same time, I was not somebody who was really picky on performance. I wasn't somebody who had to play every game at the highest performance settings possible. No, as long as I play the game, it doesn't affect the gameplay, it doesn't cause any major lag that prevents me from playing the game to move forward and progress in the story and whatnot, I was really happy. Though I got the Steam Deck and I was really impressed by it, I really loved the comfortability of the Steam Deck, how I hold it and press the different buttons as I play those different games. But when I started off, I kind of went back and forth with the Steam Deck and the consoles, because you gotta remember that I grew up with consoles. I was fully invested in the PlayStation as well as the Xbox ecosystem for many years, so it was really hard to make the complete transition as much as I really wanted to right away. So I went back and forth and slowly made the transition. I slowly gamed more and more on my Steam Deck and gamed less and less on my PS5 and Xbox Series X. In January this year, I finally pulled the trigger and completely devoted myself to the Steam Deck as well as the Steam ecosystem. And I really love my Steam Deck. It is one of my favorite devices that I have owned throughout my life. So with that being said, let's talk about why I really love my Steam Deck. Just when the Steam Deck got delivered and I opened it and tried playing on the Steam Deck, I was really mind blown, because the thing was that I was totally amazed at how many games actually work on the Steam Deck. Now I know you hardcore PC gamers will say that, oh man, but the Steam Deck runs Linux, it runs SteamOS, so there will be a lot of games that are not compatible with the Steam Deck, especially the multiplayer games that use anti-cheat that only works on Windows. And now in 2025, there are also other options for PC handhelds that are much more powerful, like the ROG Ally X, as well as the Lenovo Legion Go. So you may be also wondering, say, oh man, this is not really that special. Well, yes, I get it, but coming from a console gamer, I have never experienced a handheld which had the capability to play so many AAA games. Playing games that were in the PS4 and the Xbox One era, that was something in which I have never experienced it before, because like I said, even though I heard Valve claim that the Steam Deck will be able to run a lot of AAA titles, but from hearing about it, that's different from actually seeing and experiencing it. I was really glad I was able to experience that. And another thing that I really love about the Steam Deck is the amount of tinkering that you need to do. The Steam Deck, sure, there are some games that require some tinkering in order for it to run well or run better, especially with newer AAA titles. Even though newer AAA titles, a lot of them are not really optimized well with the Steam Deck due to the Steam Deck's limitations. But for the most part, a lot of games, especially the older games, aka the games that were released during the PS4 and Xbox One era, which in my opinion were the best AAA games, but that's just my personal opinion, as well as obviously some indie games and games that are considered probably AAA or AA, but at the same time they are not so graphically demanding. A lot of these games may require little to no tinkering. Sure, tinkering may enhance the graphics and the performance and whatnot, but it is not mandatory. It is not a make or break which causes the game to be completely unplayable and that you will not be able to experience the game fully. Though I am getting more into enjoying tinkering, but for the most part, I don't want it to be something that is mandatory, something in which I will have to spend multiple hours just to tinker in order for a game to run. I want to be somebody at the end of the day to be able to experience a game right away as much as I can. Now, aside from game compatibility, as well as the situation about whether or not you want to tinker a lot or tinker a little or not tinker at all, with all that out of the way, what are other things in which I really love about the Steam Deck? And I would say, most importantly, another thing that I love about the Steam Deck is the comfortability when holding it. When I use the Steam Deck, it really feels like something in which I would hold regularly to play a game, and where even though in the beginning I felt that the Steam Deck was a bit bulky, but it really wasn't too bad. I could easily hold it, play it, and it felt very comfortable. It didn't feel like my hands were gonna cramp or whatnot. And even the back buttons here, even when I click those back buttons, it doesn't feel really awkward on the fingers. It doesn't give any strain to my fingers, and it is something in which it's just really comfortable. In fact, I would arguably say from all the past handhelds that I've used, the Steam Deck is the handheld in which I feel the most comfortable to use. I mean, sure, I didn't mind using, the portable game consoles like the Nintendo Switch. I didn't mind using the 3DS. I didn't mind using the DS, Game Boy, those kind of systems. I didn't mind using it, but at the same time, it did not feel as comfortable as playing on the Steam Deck. Playing on the Steam Deck, it just feels as if I was using a controller that was bigger and it had a screen attached to it. And speaking of games itself, I was really amazed at how much money I could save. I mean, sure, there was the Steam Spring Sale, the Steam Autumn Sale, the Steam Summer Sale, the Steam Winter Sale. There were seasonal sales that had hefty discount for all kinds of games in the Steam library for all 4 seasons. But on top of that, there were also tons of great deals periodically, and where I was somebody who could easily pick up a whole bunch of indie games as well as AAA games that run well on the Steam Deck for really a cheap price, and where the games are also pretty decent to play as well. They were not crappy games, because for the PlayStation and the Xbox, sure, there were some discounts for games, but first of all, they weren't that great, and also for games that were dirt cheap, they were also games that were pretty crappy in my opinion, that had no flavor and whatnot. But as far as Steam goes, there were games in which even when they are in a hefty discount, they are high quality games that are totally worth your time, in which I really appreciate, in which I save so much money. As well as what I also love with using the Steam Deck, I also learned that there are also those third-party sites like Fanatical, in which I could get a key and also punch the key in my Steam account and get access to the game, and where certain times I will be able to take advantage of those deals on Fanatical and where I could get games cheaper because on their end it is on sale, but on the Steam store it is not on sale. That's an example of which I am also amazed by the Steam Deck. Now the next reason in which I really loved transitioning to the Steam Deck is a really important thing, and that is free online. Because even though I am somebody who primarily plays single player games, but I am somebody who is still a regular human being. I have friends, and the thing about me with multiplayer games is that I do from time to time play multiplayer games, not really so much the mainstream multiplayer games that have those anti-cheat softwares, but more so the, co-op games like the ones that I included in the top 10 co-op list. That is a list video that is in my channel. But anyways, it is just so for me to hang out with my other gamer friends. It is not for me to play regularly, but there are times when I want to hang out and chat with some gamer friends, and that is one way for me to connect with them while enjoying the game as well as the company, because as guys, we need to be doing some kind of activity as a way to bond. And bonding with gamer friends, the one direct way to do that is play video games with them. And so having the free online, in which I don't have to pay for the PlayStation subscription, I don't have to pay for the Game Pass subscription, it really helped me also save a lot more money per month, and that is something in which I am really grateful for. Now another thing that I will say in which I'm also happy when I jumped in with the Steam Deck was the situation of early access. If there's a game in early access in which I am really excited and I can't wait to play, I don't mind spending the money beforehand and playing the game, and potentially if the game is good or if it's buggy, I give a review of the game to the producers in the forums and share my feedback, and potentially it will lead to a better launch when the game officially launches to the public. It is a win-win situation, I believe, because if you're somebody who is really excited for a game, you don't have to wait for their official launch. You can possibly play the game a bit earlier and see the development that the developers do throughout the time period, as well as give some feedback. And also for the developers, if they want to raise money while they develop their games, they can take advantage of early access, because there are those people who want to pay earlier and where they will get some money to potentially develop the games better, and then when the game finally launches, it will be better and potentially more people will buy the game. It will be a win-win situation for both parties. Now, though the Steam Deck is not as powerful now as other PC handhelds, obviously comparing to the major handhelds like the ROG Ally X as well as the Lenovo Legion Go, even though it is not as powerful as the other PC handhelds, but I personally, in a weird way, maybe it's just me, think that it is a blessing in disguise. Because with the Steam Deck being less powerful, it really gave me the opportunity to go out of my way to try out more indie games, as well as older games that I either, number one, would feel overjoyed to revisit, or number two, just never got around to it. One game in which I remembered that I picked up for a really cheap deal, I think it was just a few dollars, and that was Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. I mean, this game, I really loved the open world aspect of it. I loved how you get to go around playing as an undercover cop in the Hong Kong streets. It just brings about the vibe of, the Asian culture. So yeah, that was a game in which I really loved. I never got a chance to play it back in the day. And honestly, if I had a more powerful handheld PC like the ROG Ally X or the Lenovo Legion Go, I don't think I would really go out of the way to play Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. The game is relatively old, it wouldn't really cross my mind. Another game in which I remembered where I got to try it when it was on sale for only $1 freaking dollar, and where the game originally was $20, and that was Figment. I mean, Figment, what I really loved about that game was the jolly characters, and where I get to accompany the main character to help him experience breakthrough from insecurities, to help him find a cure from his insecurities. So that is something in which I really loved. I loved the action side of things, I loved the jolly characters, and it had a beautiful world, and where it metaphorically represents the cognitive side of the mind. So that is something that is just really awesome, and a great hidden gem that I got to experience, in my opinion. As I explore those different indies, as I explore those older AAA games, I just get so amazed at the creativity, so amazed at the awesomeness of those hidden gems that I would not have considered, would not not have gone out of my way. Sure, if I had a more powerful handheld PC like the Lenovo Legion Go or the ROG Ally, I personally would still utilize the Steam store and buy those different games. But to be honest, even though I buy those games for cheap, it could most likely end up in the backlog because I would still be more intrigued with the newer games, the latest and greatest. They are more reputable. I may not be somebody who potentially will make it a priority to visit the backlog. I don't know, that maybe it's just me, and I know other people may think differently, but the Steam Deck really helped me kind of appreciate the little things, and I'm forever grateful about it. Now, another thing that I was really impressed with the Steam Deck was the amount of battery life. I mean, even though, most games that I play, they would only go about, 2 or 3 hours before I have to recharge. To me, it's not a big problem. I know a lot of people, they wish that the Steam Deck would potentially give more battery life, but to me, it's not a big deal because I find myself more and more just playing the Steam Deck at home. I mean, sure, I would take it on vacations, but it's usually for those long vacations, the vacations in which I would go out for a few days before I decide to bring my Steam Deck out there. Because if I was to just go hang out with some friends, usually I like to spend my best moments just away from my electronics during the few hours I am spending time with my friends. I'm not somebody who brings my Steam Deck all the time to everywhere. If I were to take it outside, it is mostly for a trip that is overnight, in which I would spend time in the hotel or Airbnb, and where I use the Steam Deck to play games kind of more in the evenings to just basically wind down. But as far as taking it on the go, I don't take it out every single day. What I'm getting with is that I usually have access to outlets. I have access to outlets all the time, so to me it's not a big problem where I game for, let's say, 2 hours for a day and then I basically charge it in order to play the next day. It's not a big problem for me. And also for me, after playing a few hours, usually I like to take some breaks, and what better way to take a break and just charge the Steam Deck. So if most games are able to run well and able to last me 2 hours of battery life for one session, to me that is plenty. Another thing that I was also impressed was the customer service of Valve. The thing is that as far as Valve goes, I never had a problem when I wanted to return a game. When a game doesn't run properly, I never had a problem with contacting customer support for a refund, and they happily just return the money back to my wallet. So that is something in which I also would have to give credit to them for being consumer friendly. And so yeah, I really love the Steam Deck, and moving forward I might decide potentially to experiment more with the Steam Deck. I might potentially start using a mouse and keyboard to play some games in which they only support mouse and keyboard and see how that goes, as well as I'm also interested to start trying out different types of plugins for the Steam Deck to see how that goes, because since all that is usable for the Steam Deck, why not try those different other stuffs in which I never tried before, as well as I potentially will also want to try emulation to emulate older games that are no longer supported and where they have been pulled out from the different stores in order to preserve older games. I potentially would want to do that, just basically trying different things with the Steam Deck. But yeah, friends, what do you love about the Steam Deck? Would love to discuss in the comment section below. And I know today is a little bit different. This is a more laid back type of nostalgia video, but if you are somebody who am really interested and want me to do this from time to time, please let me also know in the comment section below. And as always, if you love gaming lists, gaming reviews, gaming discussions, and everything related to the Steam Deck, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so you not miss another video. I try to post Mondays and Fridays around 6 p.m. Pacific time, so stay tuned. Once again, my name is Joey from the Nomadic Gaming Guild, and game on!